Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear participants of the 12th International Scientific Conference, Region, the Culture, Language and History. It is a great pleasure for us to be here and to start our plenary session. So first of all, we would like to thank to all of you who are here in the room, coming from different countries and wishing to share with the scientific community of this conference. As well, we are very glad that we have some very important participants online, willing to share the insights, but having no opportunity to travel, so they are joining us online. Today, we are very honored to have some international guests, our dear friends and colleagues who are here not for the first time. So we would like to welcome all of you in this conference and to wish you all the best. Today, the plenary session will be started with few opening speeches from very honorable hosts of Vilnius University campus in Šiauliai Academy. First of all, we would like to invite Vice Rector of Vilnius University, Prorector of Research, Professor Dr. Edita Sužiedelienė, to give the opening speech. Please, Professor, could you start?
Thank you, Rita, for introduction. Hope you can hear me properly.
Yes, we do.
Once again, dear guests, dear colleagues, dear participants, mieli svečiai, mieli kolegos ir konferencijos dalyviai, on behalf of Vilnius University community, I would like to warmly welcome you to the conference, which is organized by Institute of Regional Development of Šiauliai Academy of Vilnius University. On my behalf, I would like to thank the organizers and speakers for their contribution to the conference and for the contribution to its scientific program as well. My special thanks go to Dr. Juknevičienė for nurturing this conference for so many years. Actually, the conference is already counting its second decade. And during these years, it has grown its loyal national and international partners and participants. In recent years, this event has been organized together with the Research Excellence Network, RENET, which was initiated and coordinated by Šiauliai Academy as well, and which provides expertise, networking, and contributes to research capacity building, especially for young scientists. And I very much hope that they are actively participating in this conference. I'm also glad to point that the conference is becoming a platform for multidisciplinary discourse of regional studies. This is well reflected in the conference program topics, which range from ethnographic regional identity to regional policy and governance, and as well to very, very relevant nowadays topics. So one of the key aspects of regional development is the formation of economic and cultural regional identity. Therefore, the history, language, and culture of the regions are those competitive and distinctive features that, when combined with new technologies, social innovations, indeed could provide a unique potential for regional development. I very much hope and I believe that all these issues will be actively discussed at the conference, involving experts from different disciplines and different fields. So I wish you an interesting event, a very good time being together. I wish you to plan next conferences and also wish this conference to, to grow and strengthen and expand. So good luck to all of you, and thank you for having me in this event.
Thank you so much, Vice Rector, for your inspiring and very motivating speech, which inspires us to dig deeper into regional studies, into regional issues. Thank you so much for being with us today, this morning. And now we would like to ask for the opening speech from the Deputy Head of Research by Vilnius University Šiauliai Academy, Professor Dr. Diana Cibulskienė. So, Professor, the floor is yours. Please join us.
Good morning. I am very happy to welcome all participants in this conference, annual conference each year. They are participating here, they are participating online. So really this conference is, as the Vice Rector said, interdisciplinary conference, which connect the people. They are working in different fields, in history, language, and as well in culture aspects, and as well in economics, governance. So it shows for us that it's very important to meet, to discuss, that the regional aspects are very important for all of us in different countries and in different regions. So really, I am very, very thankful for Regina Kvašytė organizing this conference each year. During the pandemic time, we had as well this conference online, and we see that it's tradition, and this tradition should be in the future as well. So thank you very much for all of you that you are participating, that you are discussing, that you are coming to Vilnius University Šiauliai Academy. I wish you very interesting discussions, 2 days, during these 2 days, and to hope to see you next year in our conference. Thank you very much, and see you next year.
Thank you very much for the Deputy Head for Research of Šiauliai Academy of Vilnius University, Professor Diana Cibulskienė. And now we would like to invite for the opening speech, the last but the most important, I guess, speaker, because it's our soul and the heart of the conference. It's our chairperson of the conference scientific committee, Associated Professor Dr. Regina Kvašytė. So Regina, please come here and share your emotions and how do you feel today, this morning?
Hello, everybody, dear speakers and listeners. On behalf of the scientific committee and the organizers, I congratulate all the participants of the 12th International Interdisciplinary Scientific Conference, the region History, Culture, Language. Both those who came to Vilnius University Šiauliai Academy and who joined via Microsoft Teams. In this year's conference has 52 participants from Lithuania and 6 foreign countries: Latvia, Poland, United Kingdom, Croatia, Slovakia, and Germany. They prepared 42 reports, which are divided into 3 working groups. As usual, the largest is the working group, the region in history. We have a joint working group of language and literature researchers. The working group, the region in culture, is small, consisting only of speakers from foreign countries. Our conference will have plenary sessions every day. Today, it is co-organized with the International Network of Researchers, RENET, and all presentations are in English. We have been cooperating with RENET for the 7 years. For this, I am grateful to the curator of the network and the moderator of his meeting, Vita Juknevičienė. Tomorrow, closing plenary session in Lithuanian. Participants are scientists from Latvia, Latvian War Museum, Faculty of Humanities of the University of Latvia, and Latvian Language Institute, of the University of Latvia, Rezekne Academy of Technology. Speakers from Slovakia, Matej Bell University in Banska Bystrica, and Saint Cyril and Methodius University in Trnava and scientists from Poland, Adam Mickiewicz University in Poznan, and Sedlce University of Natural Sciences and Humanities. One from the United Kingdom, the University of Nottingham, and the University of Zagreb, Croatia, each. I thank everyone who came to Šiauliai, especially from neighbor and far countries. Lithuanian higher education institutions and research institutes are following: General Jonas Žemaitis Military Academy, Klaipėda University, Institute of the Lithuanian Language, Institute of Lithuanian Literature and Folklore, Institute of Lithuanian History, two branches of Vilnius University, Faculty of History, and Šiauliai Academy. What is special about his year conference? I will say several things. Out of all themselves conferences, it is the third in terms of number of participants. There were more of them in the first and 10th. This year, several representatives of social sciences joined researchers from various fields of humanities, like in the first International Interdisciplinary Scientific Conference. I would like to remind you that in 2012, the first conference held was also on humanities and social sciences. Both experienced scientists and doctoral students participate. I would like to single out a group of historians who are doctoral students of Klaipėda University, PhD students from the University of Latvia, from Trnava, St. Cyril and Methodius University from Slovakia, and Sedlce University of Natural Sciences and Humanities from Poland. Thus, our conference contributes to the education of both Lithuanian and foreign early career scientists. Today, we celebrate the International Museum Day. Our conferences are often attended by museum professionals who also conduct research. Several museums are represented this year. Šiauliai Aušros Museum. It is also our conference partner, and this year it also celebrates the centenary of its foundation. Dauguvėnė Cultural History Museum Reserve, Latvian War Museum, and the scientific committee includes a representative from Latvian Ethnographic Open Air Museum. I remind you that the participants of the conference will have the opportunity to visit Šiauliai Aušros Museum's branch, Šiauliai History Museum, tomorrow. For the first time, Šiauliai Tourism Information Center is the conference partner too. This center provided information handouts about Šiauliai and Šiauliai region to the participants. We would also like to thank the international sponsor, informational sponsor, the newspaper Mokslo Lietuva of the Union of Lithuanian Scientists. I wish all of us successful work. Thank you.
Thank you to our heart of the conference. She makes the biggest part of the job. She gives not only her thoughts, but the whole heart to invite us and to organize the special event for all of us. So thank you, Regina, once again for your wonderful job, what you do every year. So now we are moving to the plenary session presentations, and I would like to remind to all participants who are here in the room as well in remote mode that we will have possibility to give questions for our presenters. So those who are here in the room, please raise your hand. I will give you the microphone that everybody could hear your questions. And at the same time, those who are online, you are able to give those questions in the chat line in writing, and we will try to read those questions for our presenters. We would like to remind that the Researchers Excellence Network is organizing this plenary session together with the Institute of Regional Development. This is why this plenary session is recorded, and it will be available for all researchers interested in the topic in our webpage. So we would like to ask you to keep your microphones muted while you are not speaking. And at the same time, if you want to give a question orally, so you can raise your hand on Teams, and we will ask you to give this question orally. So first of all, we would like to remind that every presenter is here, except one of our speakers, Jana Pecnikova from Mate Bell University in Banska Bystrica, Slovakia. She will be online. Other participants we will have here in the room. It's our big honor to have the speaker of the plenary session from Economic and Social Research Council of United Kingdom, University of Nottingham, doctoral researcher Nora Leach, and she will give us a wonderful presentation about her research in NATO enlargement topic. So please, Nora, could you join me in front of all?
Hello, everyone. Hello. And let me start with this. Thank you. Thank you for having me here. It is the ultimate honor to present to my colleagues from Lithuania and indeed from abroad, and to offer an insight into my research. What a wonderful community I find here. I feel truly welcomed and very much at home, and I'm very grateful for that. So today I'm planning to introduce you to my research. I understand this is a regional conference focused on the region, and this is very much a regional research. As such, I hope it will be interesting for you. My study is entitled NATO Enlargement and the Transformation of Political and Bureaucratic Elites in Post-Communist Europe, the case of Bulgaria from the 1960s until present. As you see, quite a substantial time span, more than 30 years. I'm quite interested to see what's going on in terms of appointments. Are they still political, as we know, from the communist past? Or are we becoming more European? Are we adhering to liberal democratic rules and norms? So the research is conducted within the context of Bulgaria, actually the defense sector of the country. And I will present to you the pattern of appointments within the Ministry of Defense of Bulgaria. So this is the outline of the presentation in order for you to know what to expect from me. I will first introduce my research question, which will be followed by chronology of events within the context of Bulgaria, although most of us are painfully aware of our history, the history of the region. I will just provide a bit more detail about Bulgaria. Then I will introduce you to the hypotheses derived for the purposes of this study, 3 hypotheses, which will be followed by the introduction of data and methods. So I will provide more details in regard to the methods I employ and the data set I'm using. It is my own data set. I'm very proud to share with you. Quite difficult in our context because our elites are not very willing to share and to talk. So it is difficult to advance science. However, again, I'm very proud to share with you, I managed to overcome this. So we have a full insight into the defense sector of the country. Data and methods will be followed by results. I will show you the patterns of appointment. I will show you the good, the bad, and the ugly. That's what I found within the defense sector. And then I will conclude. We'll provide the main points raised and the main questions raised by the study. So what is the impact of NATO enlargement on the transformation of political and bureaucratic elites in post-communist Europe? Well, it is very important to evaluate what happened in the past 33 years. We have to contextualize, however. So against the backdrop of democratization, marketization, and importantly, state building, followed by EU and NATO accession, such transformation should be understood holistically, which means this is a transformation towards higher capabilities. We want to see more capable, more competent, and less politicized elites within our systems. That's our common aim. Every single country in the region should strive, and actually strives for that. There are two very important dimensions, and we have to mention them. We have to acknowledge them for the purposes of the study. The first dimension is a required transition from military to civilian control of the military. Why? Well, you remember, some of you read the history books, and you know, during the communism, our societies were entirely controlled by the military, and indeed we suffered. We suffered a lot, and I know quite a bit about the history of Lithuania. That was a bleak, that was a dark period. So we don't want to see that again. What we require is civilian control of the military structures in order to ensure a healthy democracy. Without that, our democratic process will be stagnating, as you might recognize. This is also a major NATO requirement. So we all had to comply. Some of us did comply, others not so much. And I will show you what's happening in Bulgaria. The second very important dimension is transition from political to professional appointments, or transition from politically motivated appointments to merit-based appointments. You know, politically motivated appointments were the norm during communism. This was the period of the party state. Very famous or infamous, shall I say, with the political appointments organized by the communist elites. We saw total secrecy of administrative functions and obviously lack of personal responsibility. Again, it was a dark period for all of us. Professional appointments, what do we mean when we say professional appointments? Well, we are talking about merit-based appointments, or as the theory or the literature, political science states, the best man for the job. Well, I would add myself, the best woman for the job. As a feminist, we need to recognize women within our institutional structures. Let me introduce you to a brief chronology of the Bulgarian history, and we can all recognize our states within this chronology. It's not just Bulgaria, it's all of us, including the Baltic states. So what happened in Bulgaria? Collapse of the old regime in November 1989. 10th of November came to a great surprise of the population. So it should be expected that this is the end of the party state, the end of the communist regime, the end of the institutional structures as we know them, the end of secrecy, the end of the lack of personal responsibility. So we expect to see a total transformation. So in the early democratization process, Bulgaria signed the Partnership for Peace in 1994 in the hopes of accession to NATO with the cohort of the frontrunners or the best performing Eastern European states. To the great regret and great disappointment of the local elites, that did not happen. Why? Not sufficient reforms. Everything was stagnating. So Bulgaria couldn't join the alliance with the frontrunners who are actually Poland, Czech Republic, and Hungary. They did indeed join NATO in 1999. However, obviously the alliance recognized that our reforms, although we were making efforts, our reforms were not entirely sufficient. So the alliance decided to introduce its conditionality. And that happened after the accession of the first cohort in 1999. MAP is argued to be a very authoritative set of objectives, rules and regulations, requirements that we were struggling to comply to. We were struggling to implement them. So after painful reforms, they are recognized within the literature as painful reforms, Bulgaria finally received an official invitation to join NATO in 2002 and became a proud member of the alliance in 2004, together with Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia, Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania. So 2004 for all of us. I want to just to make a caveat. Much like the AU, probably you're more aware with the dynamics within the AU, much like the AU, NATO does not have a formal mechanism to expel members should the reform stagnate. So once a member, always a member, which is quite problematic. Once the stick and carrots are removed, once the incentives are removed, well, there is not much we can do in order to expel members who are not performing in accordance with the liberal democratic rules and norms and NATO requirements. So based on the literature, based on the theory, and based on the historical development of Bulgaria, there are three hypotheses derived for the purposes of the study. Hypothesis 1. The period immediately after the collapse of the regime is characterized by democratic transition and anticipatory adaptation to NATO accession, instilling civilian control over the military and, in the case of bureaucrats, overcoming partisan appointments and adopting merit-based recruitment. Hypothesis 2. During the period of NATO pre-accession adaptation, there is an acceleration of the reforms and appointment practices as determined by NATO conditionality. And hypothesis 3, once NATO membership is achieved, there is a reversal of conditionality-induced reforms, further reinforced by democratic backsliding. Quite a dangerous emerging process in our part of the world. So let me introduce you to my case study. As I said, the research is based on the single case of Bulgaria evaluating appointments within the Ministry of Defense of the country. As you see, 75 appointments of 52 individuals at the level of Minister, Chief of Defense, Permanent Undersecretary, and Director of Military Intelligence. The exact period evaluated is from 1962 till 2021. Why Bulgaria, you might ask? And that's a very good, very valid question, particularly if we are based within the context of political science. I have to answer. Well, Bulgaria shares history with all the other states in Central and Eastern Europe. As you know, communism collapsed all the old regime, democratization, marketization, state building, and ultimately AU and NATO accession. However, there is an even more important reason. Sadly, Bulgaria is recognized not only as the most corrupt state in Central and Eastern Europe, but the most corrupt state within the entire European Union. What we know from science is that higher levels of corruption lead to higher levels of political appointments. As such, the silver lining or the positive news, if we evaluate the worst case scenario or Bulgaria, we should expect to see better dynamics in the other states, which includes the Baltic states and Lithuania, obviously. The period I analyzed is divided into 4 sub-periods. So pre-1990, this is the period of party state or communism, 1990 till 1994. This is the period of early democratization where we expect to see emergent reforms and adaptation of liberal democratic rules and norms. 1994 till 2004 is the period of active preparation for NATO accession for Bulgaria, and 2004 till 2021 is the period of active NATO membership for the country. So what you see, this is the table of expected outcomes should liberal democratic rules and norms be adopted and NATO conditionality implemented? Shall we say this is the ideal case scenario? As we know, nothing is entirely ideal in our history, and obviously there are deviations that I will demonstrate in my results. So I just want to highlight all positions evaluated, the fourth ranks evaluated have to be depoliticized, no political appointments, with the exception of the minister, who is always a political figure, as we know, member of the political cabinet. On the other important dimension that I previously discussed, all ranks have to be demilitarized with the exception of the Chief of Defense, which is always a military appointment. You know, in every NATO state, this is a military personnel, military appointment, so we don't expect to see a civilian in the role. I will briefly introduce my results. The tables are based on the traffic light system, so it is easy. I know our time is limited. It is easy for you to observe and to see what's going on. The main conclusion, as you see stated at the top, uneven impact of NATO enlargement across institutions and positions. So some performed well, some positions performed well, others didn't. Normally, the more visible positions are the ones that are visible to NATO partners and to overseas partners, to the foreign community, they experience the biggest change. So at the level of minister, no surprises, pattern typical of the party states. One minister, 8 appointments, almost 30 years. Nice job if you can get it. 30 years in government. That's really nice. However, the second period is characterized by a big change. 1991, from a military minister, Bulgaria saw the first appointment of a civilian at the helm of the ministry. And this is a very prominent dissident, roundtable talks participant, Western educated with Western exposure, incredible change for the country. I'm very happy to share with you this continues until today. You see the green, so obviously Bulgaria is performing. Moving at the level of Chief of Defense, again, the same pattern, typical for the party state, almost 30 years in power, again. We don't want to see that today. That goes against liberal democratic rules and norms. The change occurs later on in 1994 till 2004 period, or the period of active reforms for NATO accession. That's when Bulgaria saw a depoliticized Chief of Defense, although still military. This continues to today. So at the rank of Director of Military Intelligence, again, unsurprisingly, pattern typical of the party state, 8 appointments, close to 30 years. During the years of early democratization, this is not a position with massive exposure, not so visible, so they were able to get away with a political military appointment. Let me remind you, again, especially demilitarization of intelligence is extremely important because we all remember the state security from the communist period, a feared institution. We don't want to see that again. So Bulgaria did not change that in the early democratization period. Bulgaria changed that in the ensuing period of active reforms for NATO accession. So we still have a military personnel at the top. It's not good practice in liberal democratic societies. However, it wasn't a political appointment. So the period of NATO membership is rather dynamic. So quite a few changes. They don't remain in power very often. And finally, in 2010, post-accession, Bulgaria complied to the liberal democratic rules and norms, appointing a civilian professional at the helm of the intelligence. However, in 2015, the Intelligence Act was reversed back to communist principles, and that is recognized already as a big problem going against NATO requirements and requirements of liberal democratic society. Even today, Bulgaria has a political military director of intelligence. We should all be alarmed by that. The findings are alarming. Finally, permanent undersecretary. Well, there was no such position. The bureaucracy was controlled from the top. We didn't have that. So it was introduced later on, obviously in the first two periods. The vice ministers were responsible for the bureaucracy, extremely politicized bureaucratic system, which only changed in the period of reforms in preparation for NATO accession. All permanent undersecretaries were professionals, highly educated, more often abroad in Western Europe. That's what we want to see. However, there are bad dynamics again. In 2017, a political appointment was made at the helm of bureaucracy. And let's conclude based on those results. As you've seen, the impact of NATO enlargement has been uneven, to say the least, across institutions and positions. We have to recognize that steps were taken towards abolishing the prolonged partisan incumbency, adopting merit-based recruitment, or the best man, the best woman for the job, and instilling civilian control over the military, with first significant change at the level of minister in 1991. We saw a dissident at the helm of the Bulgarian Ministry of Defense. Observable variations obviously exist in the data set, as you all saw. Extremely problematic are the areas of military intelligence, where we currently have a military personnel at the helm of the intelligence service. This goes against all NATO conditionality requirements and core principles of liberal democratic societies. And that's the situation in Bulgaria today, which is a main finding on this study, alarming finding of the study. We have to recognize the politicization as well within the permanent undersecretaries and within the directors of intelligence. And now I would like to recognize the limitations of my study, because that's a good practice in science. So whilst this is a single case study, it helps a lot. It sheds light onto the dynamics in operation in our part of the world, in post-communist Europe, Central and Eastern Europe. And it helps us to understand how painful the transition was and still is. Indeed, in the literature, the reformed are argued to be unfinished business. So the case of Bulgaria could help us to evaluate other states within Central and Eastern Europe. It will also help us to understand more about the newest members of NATO, for instance, Republic of North Macedonia, that's NATO's newest member. It's a neighboring Balkan state. They're often argued to be underperformers in terms of good governance. So we expect the same bleak dynamics there. And obviously the study could be used to evaluate the new members who are during the application period. That will provide more insight into the states that are about to become members of the big international family of NATO. Thank you.
Thank you, Nora, for wonderful insights, and I would say alarming or even threatening insights from Bulgaria case. As the time is flying, can we move our questions and discussion part to the end of this working group? And now I would like to invite shortly our Deputy Head for Research, Professor Dr. Diana Cibulskienė, as we have a small mission today, this morning. We have got wonderful news just yesterday. Our key speaker, Nora Leach, has become the winner of Dean Moore Scholarship Award in the three-campus award ceremony of University of Nottingham in UK, China, and Malaysia. She was awarded with this wonderful prize, but unfortunately, due to the duty to the conference, she refused to go to UK and to take this prize from the hands of rector and so on. So I think it tells something about our conference, that the conference and scientific duty of the researcher is much more than all awards of the world. So I would like to invite Professor Diana to give a small greeting, and then to Nora, can you join in front of us?
So what I can say, once again, congratulations, Nora, and good luck and success in your future research. We are very happy that you are here, that you are part of our conference, and as well that you are a researcher, such a fellow at our academy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm truly touched.
So I think we can
you.
go here.
Yes, I'm truly touched. Let me tell you, it does feel like home. And thank you. I couldn't leave. The conference is really important. I think it's really pivotal to share our knowledge and our insight. So yes, I'm very honored to accept that. Thank you.
We are moving to the next presentation, and I hope that everybody will have the possibility to see the slides as well as listen to this speech of our next group of researchers, the voice of the international group from Latvia University, from Hamm-Lippstadt University of Applied Sciences in Germany, and the Vilnius University will be me. It's a great honor to represent our research team, and today we have the other research team member, Dr. Rita Toleikienė, in the room. She is supporting me a lot, and I will try to share some main insights of our international research team, because when we got the invitation from Regina to take a part in the conference or to present any paper there, because everybody was invited there. So belonging to the Institute of Regional Development, we still found this conference more connected to humanities rather than social sciences. But this time, our research team was having a meeting in Germany, and the project team decided that it would be really, really interesting to share our main insights, because our topic is e-leadership, how supervisors and employees are having interactions between each other, how leadership processes are going on in municipal administrations, in local government, but at the same time using ICT tools and channels, which is very, very important in nowadays society. So I will share some insights about our theoretical background, about our project and methods we have used, and at the same time I will give you some main insights from our research projects as outcomes of our research. So first of all, I would like to emphasize that local self-government is a really, really important institution in regions. Why? Because every region has the territorial division, and usually local government has the power or ability and the right to deal with local issues, to provide, civil servants are providing those administrative public services and ensuring that all public services will reach our society members and trying to implement the public interest of local communities, regional communities. So, however, in the context of our research digitalization, now it seems like digitalization has the boundary crossing nature, because it means that we can access all information, all data, and even people online, and it doesn't matter about boundaries between or borders between regions, between municipalities or even countries. So in this context, we tried to aim our research and to present you some main insights, how much the regional dimension is relevant for researchers of e-leadership in local self-government. Is it still relevant to have the regional dimension in it, or maybe it doesn't matter anymore? So we have started this regional dimension analysis from the public administration approach. Why? Because local government is the object of such studies. Usually region is understandable as geographical area with some specifics, features, as well as particular area of the state, of the country. But in our case, we focused on regional dimension as administrative area, division, or district where the local municipalities have the power to solve all issues. When we talk about regional dimension, one of the most important concepts is coming from regional democracy, because it's based on territorial approach of empowering the democracy. It should be open, modern, at various levels, to include all the society, to give a possibility to participate in decision making and so on. However, it's still on territorial dimension. Local self-government main function is to implement the local democracy, to regulate and manage public affairs in the particular territory as well, because the competence, unfortunately, of local government cannot cross the boundaries of one district or city municipality. And we have very important institutions which have to implement this power. It's council and the mayor as elected by the society members. However, when we talk about organizational issue, when we talk about hierarchical structure where we have supervisors, leaders, as well as employees, we focus our research on municipal administrations as very important body in the structure of local self-government. However, in April of this year, our national legislation has been changed radically, and municipal administrations became not a part of local municipality as the main institution of embed right and ability to manage public affairs, but rather as a budget institution. But still, it is very closely connected to those council and mayors issues. And we still are focusing our research on this institutional level. When we talk about digitalization and digitalization processes in public administration, usually we talk about e-governance. E-governance is the concept which explains how much government is open to the society through digital channels and platforms. It is a possibility for governmental institutions to communicate with citizens as well as other institutions and businesses. That means we are focusing ourselves on external relations to the other actors in the system. While e-leadership is the concept our research team is focusing, is usually connected with the very important internal relations, because every institution in public administration has to be concerned about efficiency, about human resources management, and all internal management processes which ensure that civil servants taking positions in this institution are working according to the public interest. They are providing services in the most effective way. They are using resources efficiently, and at the same time, they are ready to help to the society. So, e-leadership is mostly connected to internal relations, but it is based on digitalization. Why it's important in regional studies? Because digitalization processes and projects are characterized by multi-channel access, but with a very specific important issue. It is cross-boundary social interactions. That means that those social interactions between employees and supervisors is a part of it. So we must focus our research in this, even talking about regional dimension. So what we found that a lot of scientists are focused on external relations of governmental institutions to the society, to other institutions, to businesses, government to government, government to business, government to citizens. Everything is quite broadly analyzed. While we are coming to internal processes such as employees and supervisors relationship based on digitalized tools, we saw the lack of knowledge and even researches in the international context. So we are focusing on e-leadership, which is a social influence process embedded in both proximal and distant context, mediated by information communication technologies. We are analyzing how face-to-face communication and interaction between leaders and supervisors and employees is changed, replaced, or sometimes combined with communication and interactions via information technologies. Our research team, as I mentioned, is coming from different countries. We have been lucky because Baltic German University Liaison Office funded the project in 2019, before the pandemics, on e-leadership in local government organizations, and together with partners from University of Latvia, University of Tartu, and Hamm-Lippstadt University of Applied Sciences from Germany, we have been interested in those researchers. We analyzed the existence and main practices of the e-leadership in municipalities, and we made document analysis as well as semi-structured interviews with leaders and employees of municipal administrations. When we are taking a small step back to the regional dimension, we would like to emphasize that our research team was discussing, is it still relevant to which particular region, country, the municipality belongs to? Or maybe we have such global European trends which deletes, erases all boundaries between us. So we took two approaches. The irrelevance approach was based on some similarities of organizational practices and attitudes in all those countries we analyzed. But relevance approach was based on differences in organizational practices, national specifics, or even organizational or individual attitudes towards e-leadership. And we found really nice material for pre-pandemic analysis because the research was made in 2019, before we all moved to remote line. So even before the pandemic, all 4 countries kept e-services as really nice tool for citizens, for institutions to provide public services. And they already used some e-systems for document management or human resources management. And even politicians as well as society pressed such institutions to become more digitalized. We found that all countries had the possibility for remote working according to their legislation, but not very much appreciated and used by employees. They used already some ICT channels, but face-to-face communication was dominating. And of course, they all, during the interviews, emphasized that we still need some trainings how to use those systems, or how to, maybe we could use some additional tools, but we need some additional training for our competence increasing. They all understood that such tools may help to increase efficiency, to reduce bureaucracy, to save some time, and at the same time to make all operations and communication more simply. However, we found some differences between our countries, and it makes our regional dimension relevant. For example, that even we had, in Baltic states, we had the possibility for remote working, not very much appreciated by municipal administrators. It was because it was even kept by leaders in their mind that it might be a way for employer to do nothing at home, not working, just pretending I'm working. So they were not so motivated, both leaders and employees. We found that new technical e-systems were already given, but the problem was that not all staff was able to use them, or they were missing some possibilities to use those systems. We found that social media was very popular in Lithuania and Latvia, Messenger, WhatsApp, and other informal channels, while in Estonia, they developed very much. They are front runners in e-systems, in e-services. However, very small part of processes were digitalized in municipal internal things. And even Germany colleagues said, okay, it's the digitalization task. We missed some stuff for that, and it's on top task. That means that requires more efforts from employees. And Lithuanian and Latvian colleagues already talked about intrusion of ICT in our personal sphere, increasing some work stress, fading boundaries of private work space, while Germany colleagues emphasized that e-leadership might be even a threat for the work motivation of employees. And Latvians even missed the strategic approach to such different systems in use. So both Estonian and Germany colleagues in municipalities preferred more face-to-face communication and personal communication, even combining with sending, for example, email and coming to the office, checking if it's got and the decision is made. In 2023, we got additional funding from the same Baltic German University Liaison Office to continue our study and to focus already on post-pandemic situation. That's great. And I would say, I would like to emphasize that our research team remained the same except Estonian colleagues. So we are working in the same context and with the same people in the competence of this topic. And before the pandemic, it was quite clear because of the project. During the pandemic, Lithuanian part was quite wise to repeat the same research with interviews with the same people which were interviewed before the pandemic, so we could compare both situations before and during, and now we are all focusing on post-pandemic situation. We still didn't finish our research, so I can't give you the final results, but we already have some primary insights from all those countries because we discussed what is coming in public sector after pandemics. So everybody already, like a tsunami wave, went to remote working mode. Everybody, all institutions due to the pandemic. Yeah, so we already had this ability to use those ICT tools. And the distrust of leaders in the remote working has reduced radically. Leaders learned how to manage the employees online, motivating, controlling them, and so on. But multitasking became, I think you feel the same. Multitasking became a normal practice when you use even several ICT tools at the same time or links listening from different headphones to meetings. But it became a normal practice in all those countries. It increased working hours extremely. And at the same time, there's a threat of working-life disbalance. Because what we see in the public sector in all those countries, the phenomenon of burning out becomes extremely expanded, extremely, despite of the topic, municipalities, hospitals, higher education institutions, all the public sector suffers because of that. What we see as differences, we found that Lithuania and Latvia is very common. So, our short-term and irregular on-demand meetings became very popular, and job, family issues became secondary related to the job issues. While in Germany, teleworking is possible, but usually is not used. Everybody came back to the office. If it's possible to come back, that's all. I know that Latvian colleagues are still working in some higher education institutions, still in the remote mode. So in Latvia University, our colleagues from political department. And priority there in Germany is still on, again, to face-to-face communication. And the working hours are becoming normal. However, in Latvia and Lithuania, individual ICT proficiency, accepting high working hours and absence of complaints became the main elements of the good performance of employees. So Summarizing, I would like to give you once more the same question: how much the regional dimension is still relevant for researchers of e-leadership in local self-government? What we found dichotomy between relevance and irrelevance in regional dimension of leadership. And we identified and found evidences that it's very much influenced by such specifics like legal basis, socio-cultural context, and even ICT need, background and traditions of the society where it is implemented. It is very much influenced by organizational culture and at the same time, of course, by the extreme situation which brings us to the new normal like the pandemic did. So thank you very much for listening for this presentation, and I hope that you will have some questions for me and my colleagues after the presentation. So thank you so much. And now I would like to move to the third presentation. We have a wonderful colleague coming from the University of Latvia, Latvian Language Institute of the University of Latvia, Dr. Anna Stafetska, who is full member of the Latvian Academy of Sciences. So dear Anna, the floor is yours.
Gerbėmieji organizatoriai, dalyviai, labai malonu dalyvauti šioje konferencijoje ir mano lietuvių kalba nėra tokia gera, kad galėčiau skaityti savo pranešimą lietuviškai, todėl aš skaitysiu angliškai. If we speak about regions, it is impossible to avoid language variations, because every region is a symbol of identity. So first of all is language variations. And Latvian, as far as Lithuanian language has historically developed regional varieties, and they are dialects and subdialects. So you see a map of Latvian dialects, and this net of, can you see? Yes, this net of subdialects. There are about 100 subdialects, more precisely 512, but there are places where Latvian speakers have moved from these territories, and there are only Russian, Belarusian, etc. Yes, and the central dialect you see in yellow color is spoken in the central part of Latvia, and it is the basis of Latvian standard language. Livonian in blue color is spoken in northwest, in northern Vidzeme, and in West Vidzeme, and in Kurzeme. It is in Kurzeme called also Tamish. And dialect in the eastern part of Latvia is called High Latvian dialect, and it has some dialectal groups. And this dialect differs more substantially from the above mentioned two dialects. It has many distinctive features related to sound changes, morphological features, and the lexicon. According to Jānis Enzelīns, the High Latvian dialect is closer to the Lithuanian language. There are a closer affinity between the central and Livonic, this part of Latvia, western part. And they both together sometimes also refer to as the Low Latvian dialects, as opposed to the High Latvian dialects, west part and east part of Latvian dialects. In Latvian dialectology, dialect borders are determined by sets of isoglosses reflecting both phonetic and morphological phenomena. And less frequently also lexical units. A subdialect is considered to be a language variety spoken within the borders of a civil parish, according to the administrative division of 1939. It would be before the World War II. Yes, and nowadays these borders of Latvian dialects and subdialects have changed due to many extralinguistic factors, as migration, influence of standard language, influence of other languages, and so on. First of all, we have a look into the first records concerning the regional differences of the Latvian language. A deliberate classification of Latvian dialects began only in the 19th century, but certain attempts to register the regional linguistic differences have been attested much earlier. And these two persons must be mentioned: Georgius Mancelius, a Baltic German Lutheran minister and author of the first dictionary of Latvian, Letus. He emphasized that there were noticeable differences in Latvian spoken in practically every parish, 17th century, and gave some examples from different subdialects in the preface of his dictionary. Paulus Reinholde, in his Historia Latvica, where he comments on the regional variations of the Latvian language, and this work, as mentioned by Latvian dialectologist Marta Rudzīte, already marked the approximate boundaries of Latvian dialects. Gotthard Friedrich Stender, in his grammar, for the first time, he described all three dialects, but without naming them. And it's very interesting how he characterizes dialects. He used an evolution best and clearest for the dialect spoken in the territory of the central dialect of modern Latvian. Nowadays it is central dialect. And the first Latvian translation of the Bible was also done in this dialect. In contrast, the worst Latvian dialects, according to Stender's opinion, were those that are nowadays called the High Latvian dialect, that differs more from the other dialects, and the Livonic dialect of Kurzeme. And Stender called these dialects Hochlettische and Tāmische, but not central or middle. And Jānis Enzelīns later referred to Stender's grammar as a child of his time, when the Indo-European comparative linguistics was still in the process of development and the kinship of Baltic, Slavic and Germanic languages was not yet fully investigated. As we see, the first accounts of the Latvian language in any case put more emphasis on the differences between various dialects rather than on the names of their geographical areas and names of them. So, August Bielenstein, the first scholar who not only described all three dialects of Latvian language, but also gave them their names. Also German nationality. In his grammar, Die lettische Sprache nach ihren Lauten und Formen, Bielenstein analyzed the phonetic morphological differences between the dialects and gave quite an accurate description of their territories and named the three Latvian dialects as follows: High Latvian, Oberländische, Northwestern Curonian or Taimian, Nordwest Kurische, Tāmische, Central or Middle dialect, Mittlere. He also refers to High Latvian as Hochlettisch and to the Curonian and Central dialects as Low Latvian, Niederlettisch. Again, this was the first extensive account of the dialects of the Latvian language. And the first geolinguistic map of Latvian language also is associated with the name of Wilenstein. In 2010, a map entitled Karte des Lettischen Sprachgebiets, compiled by Wilenstein, was found in the National Library of Latvia by a Baltic linguist Edmundas Trumpa. Here you can see this map, the first map, geolinguistic or dialectal map, and here we can see all three dialects and the boundaries of these dialects. So, this map has been included not in linguistic book, but in the article by Julius During, a personality better known in the art history of Latvia than in Latvian linguistics. And Wilenstein gave his permission to use his dialectal data. Edmundas Trumpa presumes that this map might also have been an illustration in Wilenstein's grammar, Die lettische Sprache nach ihren Lauten und Formen, and it was already carried out for the purpose of Wilenstein's next linguistic map published in 1892. And again, interesting that he calls central dialect of Vidzeme as the poorest Latvian language, central dialect. And here you can see this geolinguistic map published in 1892, and this is a map of isoglosses, Isoglossen-Karte, as we can read here. And there are, it has to be mentioned that Wilenstein was the first to use the term isogloss to denote the boundaries of linguistic phenomena. And this map contains 33 isoglosses, mostly representing phonetic, morphological features, and marking the boundaries of their areas. And here we see that bundles of isoglosses clearly identify the boundaries of dialects and subdialects here. Curonian and also Livonic isoglosses here also, and some isoglosses from the north to south. This is the boundary of High Latvian dialect. So these are more detailed. It has to be said that the only lexical isogloss is one, adjective dish, big, as opposite to its more widespread equivalent liels. This isogloss is in Kurzeme. Here it's hard to see, yeah, but there is this, and if we compare with our Latvian dialect atlas, the area of use of this isogloss coincide. It's very interesting because people use this lexeme dish. More information, as Edmundas Trumpa points out, can be gained from the comparison of the maps, these two maps. The edges of the dialect areas correspond to certain fragments of the isoglosses. Yes, Wilenstein is very has done very significant work in Latvian dialectology. The boundaries of the Latvian subdialects and dialects were not clearly demarcated for a long time. In 1933, Enzelins wrote, "Only when the dialects will be thoroughly investigated, isoglosses of specific subdialectal features could and should be identified and the subdialects grouped. The isoglosses should be concerned not only with grammatical but also with lexical features which might differ in the subdialects. For this purpose, the subdialects were traditionally described, analyzing their morphological, phonetical, and lexical qualities until the end of the 20th century. And that's interesting that, according to Enzelins, it is possible to set boundaries for one particular feature of the dialect, but not for a dialect. If we had one feature for dialects, it would be easier to remark these boundaries, but these are in Latvian dialectology. It is a bundle of isoglosses. Yes, and this map had a direct impact on the description and the mapping methods of further geolinguistic studies in the 20th century. And Jānis Enzelins wrote that following the example set by Bielenstein, it is also possible to gather information about material culture in different regions. This information in its turn can help to identify the borders of territories inhabited by the ancient tribes, of course, Baltic tribes. So, and in the 20th century, on the basis of descriptions of subdialects, Velta Rūķa Draviņa created isogloss maps, subdialects groups of Latgale and the Livonic area of Kurzeme and Vidzeme, and she established quite precise boundaries of the groups of subdialects. Here you can see Livonic subdialects of Kurzeme by Velta Rūķa, and also we see the same isoglosses that are in Bielenstein's map. The most active period in Latvian dialectology was second half of the 20th century, and subdialects were described, analyzing, and material were gathered according to unified questionnaire. So, name of Marta Rudzīte has to be mentioned because her monograph Latvian dialectology, which describes also the boundaries of dialects and subdialects, was published in 1964. In 1982, Rudzīte published a detailed map of Latvian dialects and subdialects. And it should be said that this demarcation is still used in the geolinguistic atlases of Latvian dialects and other publications on dialectology and geolinguistics. This is the same map. I showed it at the at the beginning of my presentation. Nowadays we can't speak about dialects and subdialects in that traditional sense, but we have to investigate, to organize new expeditions, as the Lithuanian colleagues have done, and and of course the situation would differ from traditional. We had a research project, Latvian dialects in the 21st century, and we selected several subdialects from each of major dialects, and there were some socio-linguistic questions about, and what is the situation? The central dialect as the basis of Standard Latvian is closer to standard Latvian, and only some morphological differences still exist. In grammar, some maybe are recorded, but it is close to. Livonic dialect seems to be more tenacious than the central dialect, and although many of the speakers nowadays prefer to use standard Latvian more, there are still several specific Livonian dialectal features to be observed in the speech of all generations. Yes, and of course, subdialects are more vital in Latgale, a region where they are supported both by historical Latgalian written tradition based on the local subdialects and the usage of subdialects in Roman Catholic Church and in cultural events. Historically, the territory of this dialect has been divided for more than 300 years. Its western part in Vidzeme was subject to German dominance, but eastern part Polish. No, of course, this separation impacted the subdialects as well. And here you see the map. 300 years, one part of High Latvian dialect, Latgale, was separated from the other ethnical territory of Latvians. And some conclusions. Nowadays, the borders of particular dialectal features and the territorial boundaries of dialects are difficult to distinguish due to active migration of the people and other changes. If we think about the future of dialects, yes, from one side it is nivellation of dialects, but from the other side, the self-preservation tendencies of the dialects are still observed, and there is a hope that they will retain their value and importance in future as well. Ačiū. Paldies. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Dr. Anna Stafecka, for very interesting insights on Latvian dialects, and we hope that we will have some questions for you after the last presenter. And today we are moving to the last presenter, and I see already our wonderful colleague from Slovakia. I will stop sharing the screen that Jana, you could share your slides. So, hello, dear Jana Pecnikova. We have a wonderful speaker from Matej University in Banska Bystrica, Slovakia. And Jana, you are today ready to talk about cultural landscape, speaking territories and transformation, as well as cultural memory. So we are very excited to wait for your presentation. So, Jana, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to participate again in the international conference, the region History, Culture and Language. I hope that I can see my screen, so I hope that you can see it, and I hope that you can hear me. So it's working, I hope so. Yes.
Jana, we can see and we can hear you.
Perfect. Thank you. So before we start, I would like to just say a few words about the content of my presentation. I will present a wider introduction into the topic, and later on I will present our case study, which is the result of the qualitative research we realized, and we were focused on the transformation of the cultural landscape into the digital environment. So What you can see on the photo is Paris. So we will move to the city of Paris that is chosen as an example of speaking territory in the cultural landscape. And what's the focus of my presentation is the challenges of transformation with respect to cultural memory. As it was mentioned before, my name is Jana Petnikova. I'm from Department of Roman Studies at Macieewicz University in Banska Bystrica. And we will slowly start my presentation. So to see what's going on, a few words about our research of cultural landscape. Very important, what I want to say is that we have already did few, let's say, not only researches, but we already published books, we already published papers in the topic. We started to research the topic a few years ago. It's not very, it's quite current topic and current research. Previously, I worked with the international team from Poland, from Slovakia, from Italy, and from Spain. That was the base where we started to discover the topic in the interdisciplinary way. It was a mixture of cultural studies, urban planning, history, of course, education and social sciences. And later on, nowadays, we continue in the project that it's focused on the culture memory of European cities. And my focus is on France and especially Paris. That's the reason why I decided to put the photos of the landscape, of the Paris landscape to my presentation. Cultural landscape, it's quite new topic. I've been talking about this topic for years, but also I presented a presentation in this conference a few years ago. It's a concept that characterizes the diversity of forms, urban structure, historical value, and symbolical function. And it's a materialized system that carries a variety of verbal, visual, and physical aspects of human existence. And very important is that it consists of different cultural layers, which are often associated with the memory of a place. And this is a very important part of my presentation, because speaking territories, it's something what's the, let's say, the cultural landscape made of and created of. So we now start very slowly, also not in like a big numbers, research of silent and speaking territories. It's quite common in urban planning, but not only. What's important, it's the diversity of culture that makes cultural landscape different, specific, and distinctive. And it's that the culture, it's what allows to prevent many interventions in a historically valuable environment. And it's also culture that transforms the landscape by placing objects and creating speaking territories. I know that maybe if you hear for the first time the term speaking territory, it can be quite confusing, but we will look at what it means. So what is a speaking territory? Speaking territories are, but not only, memorials, monuments, and other significant architectural elements located in the landscape. So something was really significant for the landscape, and also places whose character is associated with intangible significance and non-material importance for a given culture. So this is something what's interesting in the research, that what's unacceptable for one culture may attract attention or may attract attention in another culture. It means that we can observe in different cultures different structures, forms, and aspects that are very significant in the landscape. What's the character of speaking territory? This is also very important, because the character of speaking territory is associated with the historical identity of place, and it's directly related to the collective memory. It's very often linked also to events and personalities, and has significant impact on the inhabitants of the territory. So, of course, it's easy and obvious for them to understand the cultural codes or symbolic forms that are kept at the place. It can be confusing for somebody from abroad to understand why this is placed, or what the personality, what's the event. But also there is a new phenomenon coming when we are looking at the weakening of the collective memory, which is no longer based on facts, let's say real facts and real events, but on the meaning that we keep in our memory. This is what Assmann wrote, and this is something what we can see now, because these memories are presented and preserved by the various events, activities, and traditional ceremonies, which keep the content of this memory alive. So the speaking territory is really speaking through the people who are presenting, who are active, or who are just dealing with this memory. But also there is very important factor of let's say, cultural amnesia. That means that people cannot keep in memory or just do not understand really much what and why the event happened. But on the other side, there is a very important, and this is what cultural anthropology consider as the core of the cultural memory, and it's the memory of the dead. We find that many speaking territories are based on these memories that keep in memory people, or at least their names, that are already dead, and we still remember them. So this memory is tied to the memory of the living. So in addition to reflecting reality, it can turn into a rumor about the ancestor, which may not be objective or true. When we are dealing with cultural memory, very often we are facing different cultural myths and mythologies, or in terms, in very broad term. It means that there is kind of rumors about people, about personalities, and so on. And of course, there is the culturally conditioned meaning of that has guaranteed glory in the form of preservation in the national memory. Thus, we come to the original idea of the remembrance monument, which become a materialistic or materialized symbolic form of this sacrifice in a space. So this is something what's very often, we can find it almost everywhere, and it's very interesting to see how is it transforming, because when we look at the city of Paris, I'm not going to talk about every monument and every building and every personality, because in my case study I want to present a little bit different point of view, but what we can see and what's written in my presentation, the transformation is very often made by power and thanks to the power. That means that the cities or just territories are transformed under the pressure of people who want to very often stay in memory. That means they build and they are just very open to different structures and new expressions, just they follow their, let's say, political ideologies, and sometimes this authority is materialized and visualized in the city. If we talk about Paris, I don't want to go to the past very much because it's a very big topic and it's maybe too much for my short presentation today, but the city of Paris we see on the photo is transformed in the 19th century, and what we consider as Paris, it was a city that was rebuilt completely during the reign of Louis III and the Baron Osman, who was just the founder of the original idea to completely rebuild the city and to make a big boulevard and to really, let's say, completely deconstruct the medieval character of Paris. But in my case study, I want to move a little bit to the present, and that's what I want to present is the simulated cultural landscape. And this was a topic I discovered with a colleague from pop culture studies and game studies, because we were fascinated about how cultural landscape can be created in a digital world, in digital, let's say in games, not only in technologies, but how they keep and what they keep as a landscape, as the characters and futures. So the stimulated cultural landscape can be understood as a multi-layer, virtual and interactive representation of meaning that connect physical form, culture and symbolic meanings, fictional narratives and the genealogy into one complex audiovisual creation. And this gamified setting, the Paris of French Revolution of the 18th century, in a video game that is called Assassin's Creed Unity. can find the creation of the new dimension of Paris cultural landscape. The design of the environment is created on the basis of real city historic buildings, the layout of streets, other urban elements which historical events and figures are incorporated. It means that we can find the city that we cannot access now. It's the city of 18th century that was really based on real research of historians, and also the places you can easily be just to to play the game in this setting, but not only play the game, you can be in the city, you can see the buildings, you can see the shapes. And what's very interesting, this simulated cultural landscape is not only the architecture forms, but you can hear the noise, you can see the real people, real clothes they wear, and everything seems to be very, very realistic. So you can discover the world. And what more, in this digital landscape of the 18th century, there are elements of light and shadows, and also color, dynamic weather, or just weather effects inspired by paintings of Eugène Delacroix. And that heavy atmosphere where clouds mix with the smoke and guns and cannons. It's very interesting to see how they incorporated the painting, of course, of the 19th century, into the landscape, digital landscape that is created. And also what's very interesting, that elements of smoke and fog on one hand, and the I'm sorry, I cannot see the bright daylight on the other, are all represented in the game. Areas occupied by protesting crowds have smoke spreading in the square. The dynamic weather changes the amount of light in the environment. The colors are darker and grayer when it rains, and brighter when the day is sunny. It means that they just created an artificial version of a real city with all small details. And for me, I'm not a big fan of the gaming, and I'm not a game player, but I discovered this as a way how we can also, let's say, educate students, or just people who like gaming and playing games, because they are already in Paris. They can see, they can feel it, they can see the ambience of this space, and of course they can understand the history, because what's very important, I forgot to mention, it's about the French Revolution. That means there is a very important event from French history that it's connected with the landscape, and of course it's connected with the landscape, how is it created and presented. So this is what we found, and this is what we think that will continue, because it's not the only one video game that exists, of course, but that was one chosen to discover more on this topic. And Paris is too big to be just reduced to my small presentation. It's really a speaking territory, and there is an enormous diversity of verbal, visual, and physical elements to keep memory and identity of place. And even if you are now in Paris, you can see that there are a lot of, let's say, public art or public performances that still keep memory of city alive and open. It's not closed in museums and galleries, it's open to the society. So that is something what we find very interesting, the speaking territory, the character, and to also think in the future about what shapes the speaking territory can have, what kind of memory they present, and so on. So this is, I think, all from my presentation. Few authors I used for it, and that's all. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Jana. I hope that you can hear us. We to change a little bit our places because our guests online can see the table with all key speakers today. So Diana, thank you so much. I would like to ask if somebody has a question in the audience, please just be brave, raise your hand and give the question. And I see that our colleague would like to give, so please.
I'd like to ask Nora, why are you using the term communism, not the socialism? I'm a member of the generation of socialism, and we know that communism wasn't created. And the second one, why did you choose to explore this country, Bulgaria? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you ever so much. Interesting questions. I'll try to provide interesting answers to your questions. Why the term communism? Well, I'm a political scientist. I'm based at the School of Political Science and International Relations at the University of Nottingham, as we mentioned. And Western science tends to recognize our societies as communist societies. And I know what you mean. To me, I remember the discourse over the period of communism in Bulgaria. That obviously gives a hint of the answer to the second question. So I remember what happened in Bulgaria when I was a child. All the discourse stated, now we are strengthening the socialism and we will reach the stage of communism. So that was this mythical stage that we were all trying to reach. For Western science, we were there. It appears that we were living under communist rule, and these are communist societies. Hence the use of the terminology. So I use terminology that is already well established within Western science, and I think we should stick to that in order to make our points clearer. So if we adopt their terminology, they will know what we are talking about. Why Bulgaria? I love this question. I have to answer. I'll be completely honest with you. First, Bulgaria. From a scientific, with my scientific hat on, Bulgaria is a fascinating case because they're always behind everyone else. And when we evaluate the worst performing case, we see the bleak dynamics, the dark dynamics, but at the very same time, and this is the silver lining, the source of optimism, it gives us hope that others are performing better. If you evaluate the worst, we should hope that others are actually better. And indeed, the Baltic states are recognized as absolute front runners. They perform above anyone else in the region. And as such, I feel very privileged to be here and to explore Baltic states as well. As I said, the most corrupt state. We have to know why. We have to know why this is happening. So that's why I started my research, because corruption should be eradicated. Still unfinished business. We are working on that. And then I've got a personal answer to your question. I was actually born and raised in Bulgaria. And I was actually born and raised behind the Iron Curtain. And I never dreamt of a path in Western academia, particularly in the United Kingdom, simply because we were not allowed to dream that big during socialism or communism or whatever you would like to call the old regime. And I thought, I've got a lot to say about Bulgaria. And sadly, I don't spread positive news. My research does not indicate, or I do not demonstrate a lot of positive findings, but I think that's a positive in itself, because hopefully it will give them a chance to change and develop further. So yes, a Bulgarian, born and bred in Bulgaria, functioning within UK academia. That's why Bulgaria, that's why our region. We should talk more about our region. Thank you. Very interesting questions. Thank you.
So maybe somebody else in the room still have a question? Yeah, please.
Hello. Is it on? Can you hear me? Okay. I would like to ask my question to the honorable member of the Latvian Academy. First of all, I want to congratulate you on your last year's presentation, okay, on all your efforts to preserve all those regional languages. Now, comparing the situation in Latvia with the one in Croatia, we have three major groups of dialect: Kaikavian, Shtukavian, and Traikavian, and we have a vast majority of people who are vertically bilingual, who speak, let's say, Caucasian, and switch to standard Croatian that is linked to like Central Lithuanian in your case, and we want to preserve that. Okay, now, and there's a diglossia, so people know when to use standard and when regional dialect. Okay, what's the situation in Latvia, and what about the influence of modern media? Because in one way it helps us in Croatia to preserve that vertical bilingualism, and on the other hand, sometimes social media prevent them, and even educated people remain monolingual, or some become monolingual in standard. Okay.
Thank you very much. Yes, the same situation in Latvia. The same situation. Yeah. But more is tenacious is High Latvian dialects, because one part of High Latvian dialect is Latgale. Yes, I showed you this map. Yeah, divided. Yeah. For 300 years, divided from other Latvian territory, and they developed their written tradition, written language called, and it helps to preserve local dialects too. Yes, and cultural, for example, theaters, performances, and so on. Mm-hmm.
So, if it's possible, I would like to give the question for our last speaker, to Jana. Jana, you shared so many wonderful insights about Paris as the city and its speaking territories. But if you could, like an expert, recommend for all of us in the room to visit any spot in Paris as a city, as a speaking territory, still keeping this cultural memory, which place it would be and why?
This is really, really hard question. Really hard. Because, it's really, Paris is maybe too much, to recommend one place. But I usually explain people that it's better if you go to quarters. I mean, like very famous Montmartre, very famous Montparnasse. So just to divide a city into this part and discover more what's inside of them. So Paris is really not the best example, not the simplest one to discover, but it's very rich in history and very rich in forms. That's why I decided to talk also, because I am a French language teacher, but I decided to present you Paris because it's very unique in forms. And what I showed on the pictures, it's just a little bit of what you can find everywhere. So the speaking territory is all around you. It's on the streets, it's on the corners, it's on everywhere. So they really keep in memory. And now what they do, and what's maybe where you should start, there is problem after the fire in Notre Dame, but you can discover Notre Dame even you do not enter it, because around Notre Dame there are barriers, and on the barriers there is the history of place. It's written, it's in English, of course, for tourists. It's shown from the beginning. There is, of course, the photos and the process of reconstruction. And what I consider very interesting, there are small pictures of children drawing how Notre Dame will be beautiful after the reconstruction. That means there is still like a future of the place. So this speaking territory is really speaking to you, even you see only one building. So please, if there is summer coming, so Paris is waiting. So that's my recommendation for the city.
Thank you so much, Jana. Another question goes to you again. So Paris is a wonderful city. What about the place or the spot in in Banska Bystrica or the whole city has the same situation like in Paris, a lot of speaking territories?
That's the problem of speaking, and on the contrary, what I mentioned only in one sentence, silent territories. But I can say that we are speaking territory, but maybe not so loudly as you can find in Paris. And if we compare it, there is, of course, a very long history tradition of mining. So we are a mining city, and the copper was here just like, the very good sources. But what's very important is how we deal with cultural landscape. That was what I mentioned a little bit in my presentation. How we cultivate, how we create, what's the main topics when we create, and these interventions into historically valuable environment. What we allow to be placed or replaced in our history of the city, and what's not allowed. So this is something what we should still learn and develop and be more conscious about how to deal with the city. But I'm not very negative. I think there is a lot of things to see. So please feel welcome and invited to come one day. I will be very happy. So.
Thank you so much, Diana. We hope that more and more places will start to speak in your own place, that more colleagues would like to come to your university and to visit the city to see and to enjoy the cultural memory in your place. Thank you so much, Diana. We still have time just for one more question. Maybe we have some in the room. No, still. So maybe I can ask to our speaker, Anna. Dear Anna, you mentioned that, dialects are a still important part of Latvian culture and language. So as a public administrator, it's really important for me if state takes some initiatives to keep those dialects, to save those dialects for you.
Yes, we have some projects financed by government, and there are possibility to teach in schools, but this is only voluntaries. No, it would be better. Yes, in Lithuania the situation differs. It's better, much better.
Thank you so much, because when you were presenting those initiatives like projects, and you said that you should make some trips to collect those data from older generation. I still remember that there was a year of Samogitian language and dialects in Lithuania. I know that there is a special support for such initiatives. So I'm very happy that Lithuania can share some good practice, and I wish that Latvian dialects would be kept, despite of the fact that somebody called them worst. So I hope that all dialects will be kept, and we will have possibility to share this beauty with future generations. So at the very ending, we have the question raised hand from the audience, and I would like to ask the person who is raising the hand to switch on the microphone. Yes, and
thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so thank you very much. I have more of a remark than a question, but thank you very much. I'm also from Maciej Bell University from Slovakia as Dr. Pecnikova. And thank you very much for this amazing academic opportunity. And I just want to make this remark how these three first plenary sessions very nicely kind of umbrellaed the topic of regions. So there was a contribution on municipality administration and internet supported services. There was a contribution on dialects. There was a contribution on cultural memory. And of course, I have many questions, but of course I have to limit myself to one. I have a question for Dr. Juknevičienė, because that really caught my eye. You were comparing the electronic supported services, right? And what caught my eye was that you compared Latvian and Lithuanian, right, services with German. And you said that the German, or what was seen in the PowerPoint, that the Germans did not approve so much of e-services. And my question is whether you find this as a kind of cultural difference between these nations, or whether there could be some other phenomena entering the process. Thank you.
So much for your question, a good question. Maybe I will not give you a very particular answer because I'm not an anthropologist and cultural science representative. However, we found that really, despite of the fact that Germany invested a lot of finances to develop the e-services system in the very beginning of 21st century, now they almost stopped to improve the infrastructure, especially due to the internet connection, and they have a lot of struggles about that. We experienced that being in Germany too, because we could not connect to some meetings. And I'm not sure if it's a cultural thing, but mostly maybe organizational culture issues, because even before the pandemic, it was stated that German colleagues, especially leaders, prefer the employee to come to the office and to give the report orally or to explain some details, and the employee preferred to meet the leader to give some tasks directly and to explain in very particular way. When the pandemic moved them to the online mode, they took those services because they were forced. However, nobody very much enjoyed that. Maybe the younger generation, but not so much in public administration institutions. And when the opportunity was to come back to the face-to-face communication and interaction, they fully enjoyable came back to the normal way. So maybe it's a tradition of organizations to be very strict, because German public administration is very much based on the law. A lot of lawyers are part of this public administration institutions. In our case, in Lithuania, for example, or Latvia, we have a lot of specialists coming from different fields of area, and most of them maybe are connected to the management. And you know, management is from the original is more flexible, more risky, more open for more than a law. And in this case, our public civil servants and leaders are more open for using social media and informal ICT tools than German colleagues. German colleagues said it is very highly regulated by the law which particular channels we can use. For example, email, e-document management system, and that's all. And the phone, of course. And it's regulated. We can use intranet, but nothing more, because the data is secret and we have to think about the digital security issues. So no more free space. While Latvian and Lithuanians were enjoyable with the WhatsApp, Messenger, and other social media, Google Calendar to organize the events and so on. And they said, we don't really much interested in protecting something. It's just, communication, giving some tasks and giving back the feedback very immediately. Time saving is the most important for us. So maybe I think in this case, maybe it's not about culture like a society. It's not about the, for example, restrictions, but rather based on organizational and even public administration culture in that particular region. So this might be my answer to my colleague.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. So, dear colleagues, the time has passed, it has flied over the session. So, thank you all for being here online. Thank you, Jana, for joining us from Slovakia. Thank you. I see that some colleagues are here from the same university in Slovakia. I see some colleagues from Lithuania, Latvia. I see some colleagues even from the very far from South Korea. Professor Yung Lee joined us. So it's really great to have them all here online and to have all our wonderful key speakers today. So we would like to thank again to Nora Leach from Nottingham University and Economic and Social Research Council for being here. We would like to thank to Dr. Anna Stafetska, who is full member of Latvia Academy of Sciences of Latvia. And we would like to thank to Associated Professor Jana Pecnikova from Matej University in Banska Bystrica, Slovakia. Thank you all, and I would like to thank to my colleague Rita Toleikienė, who is the part of wonderful international research team, and that they gave me possibility and honor to present our results in this plenary session. I would like to remind for all members and participants of this conference that now we have a short break for your lunch, and we are waiting you in working groups after the break at 1 p.m. We will have 4 different sessions, the region in history, the region in language and literature, and the region in culture. Please check programs, which room is gathering those particular speakers. And I would like to remind that in the evening, all participants who are here in the room are really warmly welcomed in the conference event, so please join us. And tomorrow at 10, we are starting our closing plenary session with a lot of wonderful speakers again. And at 3 p.m., we have cultural program, including Šiauliai History Museum, which is a part of our partners of this conference. So, dear colleagues, thank you once more, and we hope to meet you next year in the plenary session in this wonderful friendship of researchers with the Researchers Excellence Network and Institute of Regional Development in Vilnius University Šiauliai Academy. Thank you and see you soon after the plenary session break.